Welcome to the Digital Native Podcast, the show where we talk to engineering leaders about their experience and some of the cool products they're building. Today we have Jeff Lutzenberger, the VP of Engineering at Onyx, out in Missoula, Montana. Jeff, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan.
So I know I've been kind of bugging you to come and be a guest, but I think it's because your guys' story is so unique and the product that you're building is so cool. To get started, tell us more about yourself, your background in technology.
Yeah, so I actually have a PhD in electrical engineering of all things. I worked on electromechanical systems and specifically micro optics. I have always been drawn to technology. You know, I programmed since grade school and programmed throughout my studies. Really enjoyed working in a lab environment, but it turns out that, I just couldn't stay away from software. So that's kind of how I ended up in software.
That's awesome. And you're out based in Bozeman, Montana. How'd you end up out there? And what kinds of companies have you worked for and in what roles?
Yeah, so I moved to Montana from Colorado. I was looking to get away from crowds and to find a good engineering school that was a little bit closer to the outdoors. And turns out that MSU, Montana State University, had a decent engineering program and a ski hill 15 minutes away, rivers to kayak and fish. So lots of outdoor activities. And so it was kind of the best of both worlds for me. I've been fortunate enough to be able to stay in Bozeman and build my career here. I started out doing finite element analysis programming, graphics programming. I moved to a CMS company called Right Now Technologies that was acquired by Oracle. From there, I went to work for a company called Workiva, that's a fintech company. Then I went to work for a healthcare company doing a mobile healthcare app, and finally landed at Onyx.
And that's awesome. And I've spent some time, we've known each other for a couple of years out in Montana, but I'd never really, prior to coming out and visiting Onyx, seen how special, how awesome Montana is, and then gotten to learn a little bit more about the tech scene in Montana. What's unique about the tech scene out in Montana, and how has it evolved since you've been out there?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I think when I graduated with my PhD in 2006, there were just a few games in town, right? And Right Now Technologies was kind of the big one. Since then, the tech scene has really taken off, and I think what's really unique about it here is that like everybody you talk to here does something cool outside. If it's either mountain biking, dirt biking, kayaking, climbing, fly fishing, hunting, like you name it, people are into it and they're really good at it. And so it's really cool to see all these tech companies starting up, and then you go talk to the founders, some of the leaders in these companies, and the next day you're out skiing with them, So it's really I think a draw for a lot of founders is kind of the lifestyle here, right? To be able to do tech, but also, be close to the outdoors.
Yeah, and it's kind of the quintessential story of, you don't have to live in San Francisco, you don't have to live in Seattle to work at a great software company, to use cutting edge technology. I mean, I've heard stories from folks on your team that, hey, one day I was working on Wall Street and I heard that, hey, I could move out to Montana. I could, work at this innovative company. It's like, what am I doing here? And it's been really kind of neat to see more and more, the growth in that area. So for you, what have been some of the highlights of the company since you started working at Onyx?
I mean, really the highlight for me is our customers, right? The Onyx was founded by a guy who is a hardcore hunter, and he built the product for his needs, for a very specific need. And it's been really cool just to come into the company and to see the authenticity within the company. And the connection that we have with our customers. I mean, our customer support is some of the best that I've ever seen. We're a mobile app company, but if you have a problem, you can still call our office in Missoula and get help, which is really cool. We are constantly getting stories from people talking about how the app helped them be successful in the backcountry. You know, either finding a fishing spot, finding a new place to camp, finding a new off-roading or overlanding route, or, you know, a new hunting place. It's pretty cool to be a part of that and to hear those stories from our customers.
I think what's so cool is a lot of the engineers building out the product are then end users of the product as well, which creates a pretty special experience.
Yeah, I mean, so the app, which I think we'll get into, it's a mobile GPS app, but if you work at onX and you don't use the app, there's probably something wrong with you. Like, it's just that much fun to use, and it's that useful if you're in the outdoors.
And that's a good place to go next. I mean, tell us about Onyx. Tell us more about the product, and who's it for?
Yeah, so our mission is to awaken the adventurer in everyone, right? I like to say that onX is kind of like where Google Maps ends, onX begins, right? So like, Google Maps can get you to the parking lot of a trailhead or recreational area, but then what do you do? So our app really focuses on, okay, now you're there, how do you get back into the backcountry? How do you have a great experience? How do you get there safely? And how do you get back home safely? So that's really what we do. You know, some of the things that we kind of specialize in is being able to take a lot of the information that we offer, the GIS information we offer, offline with you. So, you know, particularly in the Northwest or anywhere in the Rocky Mountains, like, you know, you kind of have intermittent or no cell service. So we've really designed our app around that use case, allowing you to take a lot of the map data, the topo information, any of the land boundary information that we have, all of it offline with you. And then the other thing that we're focusing on now is something that we're calling sort of rich content, but we're really starting to add more and more information into the app. So trail ratings, you know, if you go to Moab, I don't know if you've ever been to Moab, but you know, you go to Moab, what's the first thing you do? You get online, you try to find maps, right? And you go to like a million different websites to try to find them. And so what we're trying to do is really aggregate all of that, bring it into a single place, into our app. You know, it's in the palm of your hand. You can save it offline, so you've got it with you for your entire trip.
That's awesome. And you spoke to some of the problems that you're solving, you know, for your guys' customers. How are you guys different from what else is out on the market? And, you know, yeah, what makes the product unique?
Yeah, you know, what makes the product unique, there's a couple things, right? So initially, one of our really cool value propositions is we show private landowner information alongside public land information. So, you know, if you're trespassing, you can even see who owns a particular piece of property. So for a long time, that was kind of our big value proposition, right? That information was, and still is, very hard to obtain and to curate, but it's getting easier. So there's actually, so the barrier to entry, I think, is a little bit lower there. What we're doing though is we're taking the next step, and we're really looking at, like I said, bringing in rich content into the app. So like building a guided experience for our customers, and like anything you need to know about Moab, Johnson Valley, like any of the cool recreation areas you're going to go, like we want to have the best content for you, and also the best geospatial content. So not only do we tell you what a trail's like, we want to be able to show you the route. We want to be able to tell you where all of this sort of tricky, if you're off-roading, we'll tell you like, oh, here's, you know, there's a rock ledge coming up, and here's kind of how people get over it, right? So kind of just really, really going deep in terms of content is one of the things that we're really looking at.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, you know, I want to talk about and get into the technology, but last question kind of related to the company is, you guys have a really unique and special brand. I've seen it around like kind of the Montana area. And then I talked to some of my friends who are, you know, into more of the outdoors activities. They're into hunting. Onyx has a pretty special brand. Folks know what it is. They love the product. What makes, in your opinion, you know, Onyx, that brand so special, or that brand so unique?
Yeah, I think it's the authenticity, man. I mean, I think it's like, we use the product. We're solving a problem for people. Like some of your best experiences, if you're an outdoors person, our app is right alongside you when you have some of your best outdoor life experiences, right? And I think that people associate that kind of like, hey, I went further, or I got to see this new area that I've never been able to explore before. But because I had the app and I could see the map and I had confidence to go a little bit further, I did, you know? And so I think that like, that's the awaken the adventurer in everyone, right? Is like, I think people associate the app with like, it helped me have an even better experience in the backcountry. And that's frankly like the coolest part of working at this company, is to be able to do that for people.
Definitely. So shifting to the technology, want to talk about GCP, want to talk about kind of your background in the cloud. Take me back to, how did you first start using Google Cloud? And maybe, what was the compelling event?
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? So right now, Technologist, that was acquired by Oracle, actually had built their own cloud. So I had experience with sort of data centers, and sort of cloud-based, SaaS business that had built their own. When I left right now, I went to a company called Workiva. And that was when I first experienced GCP. And in particular, we were, at the time, that company was using Google App Engine for their app. And this was like I think this was early days of GCP and App Engine. Mm-hmm. But the thing that struck me about it, that just hooked me on it, was that, my first day at Workiva as an individual contributor, I had like the entire app running, and I could deploy it to my own GAE instance, and I could go in and configure it and kind of do some load balancing stuff with it. So it was just like I had this whole infrastructure at the tip of my fingers, and it was like my first day at the company, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, I mean, moving more to Onyx, did you guys initially build the app out on Google Cloud?
We did not. We were running on, so 3.5 years ago, a few of us came in as senior engineers to rewrite the entire system. So we did that in 9 months. And that was when we actually shifted from a Ruby on Rails system that was running, I don't even remember, I can't remember where it was running, but it wasn't running in one of the big cloud providers. But when we started the rewrite, GCP was kind of a no-brainer. Like, I had experience with it. I had previously worked with AWS, and I love the tooling around GCP. Like, the GCP console, keep making that thing better, because it, like, the visibility, the ease with which you can configure services and stand up new services was really the draw for me. And so anyhow, so that was, the rewrite was really when we got the whole system on GCP.
That makes sense. And I think, Google Cloud, a lot of people look at it as, hey, we're the challenger in the space, we're the late entrant. As folks on your team maybe have come in and started using it, or you yourself, were there any areas that you were skeptical, or anything that was surprising that kind of you realized that, hey, this is not true, maybe contrary to what a lot of people think?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I had the benefit of kind of going through that experience with Workiva, right? So it's a fintech company. They had proved, I saw it proved out at Workiva, and so there was really nothing about GCP that I was worried about. I mean, I had, like I said, I'd used AWS and it's fine, but there's something about GCP for us that just allowed us to move super, super fast. And again, I think it just goes back to the tooling that you guys have sort of built up around it. It's just super developer friendly. And then also having the experience at a what is now a publicly traded company that was running on GCP. I really had no concerns about stability or scalability.
Yeah, when Google has 9 applications with over 1 billion users, I mean, we tend to know scalability pretty well. And exactly. I think what's interesting too is you guys as a company, I mean, you're an application built for outdoors people by outdoors people, I think in the same way, a lot of what we're trying to do at Google Cloud is create an engineering product, by engineers for engineers.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So last couple of questions, kind of Google Cloud related. As you've gotten more familiar and become more of a power user of GCP with you and your team, what do you consider some of the strengths and weaknesses? You spoke to ease of use. You spoke to being able to develop more rapidly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the strengths is, and you're gonna laugh at this, but honestly is you and Sam, right? So like the relationship that we had working with you guys early on has been amazing. Like it's so cool to have Sam come out. Like when we were looking into some machine learning stuff, right? Like we went to your conference, right? Google Next, and kind of sat in some of the seminars, did one of the workshops, started digging into machine learning with like no experience with machine learning, like none of us had any experience. Kind of put together a proof of concept, and then Sam came out to our office and was just like, "Oh, hey, let me help you guys out with this. Like, what do you need?" And we just sat in a room and hacked on, our particular application for like a whole day, and that's just so cool to have that kind of like to know that you guys care about building a relationship with the people that are using the system is super important to me.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, just kind of looking at Google Cloud as an organization, that's where I've seen the biggest evolution over the last 2 years. Because I think a lot of the technology has been there, but really that focus and attention and being an extension of our customer teams has been really special for me to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
So last question related to this, what are some of the products that you guys are using and what are they enabling your guys' team to do? And then any favorite products?
Yeah. So we're doing some pretty cool stuff with Bigtable. I mean, it's not super secret, but we're doing some cool stuff with it that I'm really proud of. Bigtable's pretty amazing. I mean, the latency, read speeds, like reliability of it, the P99 on it is like pretty impressive so far for us. So we're leveraging that for a few things. We use gRPC quite a bit. Obviously PubSub is really important for us. I have almost all of our system on Kubernetes now. So we've been, going down that path. We were leveraging more sort of VMs, but we're able to migrate over to K8s and kind of do all of our infrastructure that way. But I mean, I think like, we're doing something like one thing that I'm really super excited about right now is we've been leveraging Bigtable and gRPC and some Go services to download as much data as we can to the phone as fast as we can. So we're really pushing the limits on how much data we can deliver to a phone, because as you know that you've got probably 256 gigs or 512 gigs, whatever you've got in your phone now, right? Like plenty of storage. And so our customers are asking us like, hey, I want like all of Montana on my phone. I don't care how much, I don't care if it fills up my phone. That's what I need. So we've been doing some really cool things with like streaming data and figuring out how to like fully saturate bandwidth so that we can get the data down as fast as possible to the phones. And we've been running some really cool load tests on this, and it's in early stages. But one of the coolest things about GCP is that I can just have an engineer or a group of engineers just like go spin up a VM, go try this out, come back with a whole bunch of data. You turn the VM off. Like it's easy for me to see if the VM's running or not. I can kind of audit as an engineering leader. It gives me an opportunity to sort of be cost effective and audit the systems. And so, anyways, yeah, that's power that, it was challenging for me to do that in AWS. I know it's possible, but it just, there's something about the console that just makes stuff like this, like where you want to go be innovative and you want to go experiment. It just seems like you guys really enable that.
And you spoke to kind of efficiency and the move from VMs and kind of moving more towards Kubernetes. Can you speak to efficiencies you guys have seen as you move there? And I think a lot of companies are in that same spot.
Yeah, I mean, for us, there's some cost savings. I mean, a lot of what we do is we've done a pretty good job optimizing costs, anyways. But I think what's most important for us is moving to, as a lot of people are, infrastructure as code, and really enabling developers to move faster and to make infrastructure tweaks, in a pull request is super, super important for us. And we're not fully on, CD yet, continuous deployment, but that's the direction that we're headed. And obviously the Kubernetes environment will, enable that for us.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. So, more people on the market right now that I think have been in the last decade or so. You guys have a couple roles or a few roles that you're actively hiring for. Can you share a bit more about that? And then as a follow-up to that, what do you as an engineering leader look for when you hire people?
Yeah, so we are hiring. We're fortunate to be able to be hiring right now. And I'm super, super proud of that, and also very grateful that we're in that position. We're hiring for iOS, Android, web, and backend engineers. On iOS, we're 100% Swift, Android 100% Kotlin. Web is a lot of mostly vanilla JS with now some Vue.js that we're starting to bring in. The backend, we're on some Elixir, Go, and then some Python services. So, yeah. So what do we look for in engineers? So one thing that I think is really special about Onyx is our company values. So I would encourage people, if you're interested in the company, just go to our onyxmaps.com/careers, and we have our company values listed there. We take them very seriously, and so that's something that I've found to be super useful, not only as a North Star internally, but also as we're hiring. It really helps us set the stage early in terms of like setting expectations for engineers. Like, here's what we believe in. The customer first, move fast, things like that. So we look for that in candidates. We look for authenticity is very important, and passion is very important to us. So, passion for some outdoor activity is obviously important, but also passion for, our craft, software development.
And I can attest, having, worked with the team, you guys hire very high character individuals, really good people. And that's, probably why you have such a great culture.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
So you guys have a couple locations. You have, an office in Missoula, you have an office in Bozeman, and then you have folks that are scattered around. You'd mentioned that this time when we were talking prior, that has given you some empathy for folks who are working more isolated, more remote. Any advice that you have for people who potentially have less experience working remote, or anything in particular that you guys have done that's helped?
Yeah. So yeah, this is interesting, right? So as you mentioned, we're a hybrid model. So we have some remote and some, on-site folks. And depending on who you talk to, a lot of people say that doesn't work, or it's very hard. And I actually agree with that. It is very hard. I think that the one thing that this shelter in place has done for us is it's sort of forced us all to build a little bit more empathy with our 100% remote employees. We were committed to remote before, but now I think we're even more committed to remote work. And I think that's really the key for companies, is that you have to take it seriously, and you really have to commit and think and build up that empathy for remote employees. So things like, we use a tool now for all our retros called Retrium, and it's just a way to facilitate sort of distributed retros amongst teams. We use Miro a lot. There's a lot of like sort of collaboration tools that we've found that seem to be sticking with the teams. And so I'm sure we'll continue to use those after we're all able to go back outside.
Yeah. So last part of the conversation, I want to shift to a little bit more personal. Just based on your experience, both at Onyx and across different companies, what are some of the top challenges that you see right now for technology and engineering leaders, both with the current pandemic and outside of that?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, one thing that I think about a lot right now is just sort of, resiliency and redundancy in our systems. And, I hear a lot of companies talking about multi-cloud, and I think, Kubernetes probably will help with that a little bit. Just like the infrastructure as code, when you can like sort of take the same recipe and apply it to a different provider, I think is probably going to help with that. At the end of the day, like, I don't really want to have to think about that. Like, so if I have one ask for you guys, like, I don't want to have to think about that. I think it's important to have a mitigation strategy in place. But it's something that, and I think it's also obviously based on sort of the business needs, right? Like, financial reporting company might have a higher need than we do. But I think overall, there's a lot of overhead in that. So I think that's probably one thing that I've noticed I hear more of recently.
So maybe a little bit more personal. What are some mistakes that you've made as an engineering leader, and how have you evolved both as a leader and a person?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I made a lot of mistakes as an engineering leader, and I think as most people in my position, I just kind of like came into this position, right? Like I've been an individual contributor for a long time, moved into management, became a director, and now I've been fortunate enough to be at a company that's very successful and growing fast. And so the next logical step is, okay, now we need to add another layer. I think the thing that's been most valuable to me, and that I would recommend for anybody in this position, is training and coaching. So any kind of like executive coaching that you can get it's super beneficial, and it's really it's transformational, and it's also like accelerates a lot of things, right? So like when I said I have made a lot of mistakes, like I feel bad about those mistakes because it affects people. And so the more you can sort of mitigate that and reduce that, right, the better it is for your teams and for the people around you. So, I don't know. I mean, specifically, I could tell you one thing that I have done that's really hard to this day is micromanaging, because I love to roll my sleeves up and like go get in the code and like go do stuff. And as we've grown, we're at 50 people in our engineering organization now. That actually becomes more of a distraction for people than it is helpful. And so learning that has been really hard for me. Like figuring out how I can still scratch my intellectual itch without like negatively impacting the teams.
No, I love that. And I love that question, because oftentimes leaders are the ones who've made the most mistakes. That's how we learn and evolve as people. It's like good judgment. You get good judgment. Well, it comes from making mistakes, and you make mistakes when you have bad judgment.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So what's something that you've changed your opinion on over the last year or two when it comes to technology?
Yeah, so I would imagine this has a lot to do with the growth of our company, but totally flat orgs. I've changed my opinion on that. So coming from sort of an academic environment, being kind of self-directed, and a person who's like, I don't need any rules or structure, it's really tempting to think that you can just kind of make that work and in an organization of any size. It's probably naive of me to say. I'm sure there are people out there listening that are like, well, obviously that's not true. But for whatever reason, I really believe that like super flat orgs worked. And I still think that minimal sort of hierarchy is key to a healthy organization, but I think that you need some. And so like one of the things that I've been focusing on a lot recently is, figuring out the right ratio of direct reports to manager. And, you can read about this, there's lots of literature that talks about this, but even sort of just anecdotally or experientially, I have found that like, around 10 is probably the most is on the high end. and 7 to 8 is like perfect for engineers. The other thing that we take really seriously here is weekly one-on-ones. So it's interesting when you ask somebody if they want a one-on-one or if they need a one-on-one, like oftentimes early career engineers will be like, well, nah, not really, I'm good. But then when you actually get in the one-on-one, it's just like that, you have a great conversation, you have a million things to talk about. And so we're really push our managers to ensure that we're meeting with each of our employees on a weekly basis to work through career growth, any other kinds of coaching opportunities that we can provide for them.
Yeah, I love that. There's no substitute for just one-on-one human interaction and that relationship. So next question, what advice do you have for young engineers who are just getting started? I've seen the way that you guys celebrate your interns. I was out there on site when we had intern day, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for folks who are just getting started?
Yeah. So some of the most important things for me are, especially in this time, like I've been thinking a lot about gratitude. I love to see engineers come in who are just grateful for an opportunity to go do something cool and learn something, right? So that's really important for us. Passion for your craft, like take your profession seriously, is important for me. Any of the adherence to our company values, like not being afraid to take a risk, right? I think is super important for early career engineers. I think it's important for all engineers, honestly. And then, yeah, I don't know. Those are probably the big ones for me. I don't know. Curiosity is super important for us. So like don't be afraid to keep learning, and make sure that you continue to kind of push yourself and learn is important as well.
Great advice. And speaking of curiosity, what is something that folks might not know about you outside of work?
Well, let's see. I'm an avid dirt biker, so I spend a lot of time in the mountains on a motorcycle. I've been doing that for several years now. I also love mountain biking. I have aspirations and dreams of becoming a good surfer someday. It's a little hard in Montana. I don't get that many opportunities, but I try to go surfing whenever I can, and I would love to be able to be, good enough that it's definitely something I need to check off, and I'm not getting any younger, so I have to get after that.
Oh, I love it. You and I have talked about the Oregon coast in potential
Totally.
future someday in the next.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing, I run a side business, kind of a side SaaS business. This goes back to the sort of, scratching that intellectual itch. Like it's a software, it's an app, and it gives me an opportunity to go hack on something. So I do that sometimes on the weekends, and that's a lot of fun. I'm a big believer in side projects. I think all engineers should have a side project.
And I've heard that before on this show is, as an engineering manager, folks are often looking for, hey, what are you doing on the side? I mean, and that shows too, hey, this is something I'm passionate about. I like doing it in my own time.
Totally. Yeah, for sure.
So if I'd like to learn, to wrap things up, if I'd like to learn more about Onyx, where do you recommend I get started?
Yeah, so I would highly recommend, if you're in a place where you can safely go outside, download our app and go outside and use it. So you can download onX Hunt in the app stores, or onX Off-Road. Those are the two you got right there.
Awesome. Well, no, Jeff, want to thank you so much for joining us. Again, I think your guys' story, I think the product that you're building is awesome. I mean, millions of folks are using your guys' app on a daily basis. Yeah, anything to close us out?
No, man, I really appreciate the opportunity. It was really fun to sit here for half an hour or so and chat with you, man.
All right. Thanks again, Jeff.
All right. Thanks.